Hi, good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here. It's been a while. It's been a year since I got to do this the last time. So I'm going to do a little bit different information this time. Last time I think I tried to flood you with a fire hose of all kinds of information about 911, and I was still new to the center here in Springfield Green. So I was myself trying to learn and memorize things and remember what was going on. I think the good thing about 911 in general is nationwide, we're all about the same. We may have different jurisdictions that we serve and different agencies that we provide support to, and definitely a different type of call volume because this area is a lot different. But for the most part, all 911 centers do pretty much the same thing, just like law enforcement does the same thing and fire and EMS do the same thing. So I want to talk a little bit more today about the training that it takes to be a 911 telecommunicator, what our people go through on a daily basis, some things that I would love for you to be able to take away from today, like things to know whenever you call 911 or things to share with your family and friends. And then just a little bit about the makeup of this center, and then what our people are like, so that you have a good understanding of what they are all about, the kinds of things that make them tick, and what works for them at the center. And that way you kind of have an idea of who is actually providing service to you, which is really important to us. So first I'm going to say something, and then I'm going to say it again at the end. This next week is National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week. It's 1 week a year that is set aside to recognize 911 telecommunicators. And we all have one of those weeks that's recognizing something that we all do. This one is definitely not enough time, but it's extremely important for our people. And so there's a celebration that's going to happen next week, even though every day we'll continue to take 911 calls. They're just getting a little bit more of a hug, if you will, from all of us saying, thank you for what you do every day. So we're going to be doing that next week. So and I'll remind you about that at the end, just so you know. Okay, so the way that the center's made up, I talked the last time about the governance. We are in between the city of Springfield and Greene County. So all of our funding comes through the county, but our employees are contracted through Greene County to be City of Springfield employees. So it makes it a little unique at the center, the way that we function and operate. And of course, we're in a county building, so we're over at the Public Safety Center. And I apologize, I would have a picture of that up for you, but I don't. You know what it looks like. You can look right out the window and see it. But we're up there on the second floor, kind of hidden away, which is a good place for us to be. Sometimes they don't want us out, so that's kind of where we stay. And we do get out into the community when we do public education events, or if there's something going on. We are trying to get out more with Office of Emergency Management. We're trying to get trained up, some staff that can actually help them whenever there's something going on, like the Route 66 Festival, or we were out at the marathon this last year at the Bass Pro Marathon. So you might see some of our 911 telecommunicators out and about after a while. Our call volume is still really high. I just looked at our stats for March, and we were nearly at 38,000 calls, incoming and outbound calls at the center. So the majority of those obviously are 911 calls. We do have some challenge calls that I'll talk to you about here in a little bit. Those are some of those things to get to know and share with your family and friends. But the 911 center is just very busy. So we're on task to be just like last year, where we'll have probably about 430,000 calls for service that we enter into our computer-aided dispatching software for all of our various agencies that we dispatch for. And we have 23 public safety agencies, but we also dispatch for park rangers and we dispatch for animal control. So we have multiple departments. And then we transfer calls over to both Mercy and Cox, who dispatch for their ambulance service. So we transfer those calls over for EMS purposes. Plus, we're working with our neighboring jurisdictions all the time, which is why we stay busy. The majority of our call volume is right here in the thick of it in Springfield. They make up over half of our call volume, and that's rightfully so. There's a lot of population here, especially Monday through Friday, early in the morning, traffic, craziness, lots of accidents, so a lot of calls come into the center. We recognize that 911 is an easy number to remember. So unlike a lot of jurisdictions, we encourage people to call 911, even if you're not sure if it's an emergency. Some jurisdictions might not always do that. They might advertise their non-emergency phone line and say, call that. We just advertise 911. We would rather you not question it and then make the phone call and then we work through what you need and it not be an emergency than for you to second guess, not make a phone call because you can't find the phone number and not get the help that you might have needed. So that's kind of how that works. Excuse me. For the center, our training is extremely important. In the state of Missouri, Missouri has a Training Standards Act for 911 that only requires up to 40 hours of training per year, or not per year, to start for 911 telecommunicators for a joint center. We are not considered a full joint communications center because we don't dispatch for EMS, so we're only required to provide 16 hours of training for fire dispatchers and 16 hours of training for police dispatchers. However, we give them about 1,300 hours to start at the center. So every year they have continuing education that we continue to give them, but from the time that they start from classroom till the time that they get fully cross-trained, they've got over 1,300 hours under their belt, sometimes more than that if we have to give extensions while they're training, and that could take up to a year to get them completely cross-trained in the center. And that's because we dispatch for so many different jurisdictions, we do so many different things, and the largest bulk of that training is call take training. We couldn't possibly train for every type of call scenario that comes through the center, but we really do try to spend as much time as possible with them, getting them used to the common calls, but also spending time simulating calls that don't happen on a regular basis. And we're thankful for that we are only simulating those calls a lot of times. Excuse me. In our department, not only is our training important, but we have a quality assurance program that is important. So quality assurance is not something that I talked about last year. Excuse me. Our quality assurance program is handled very delicately. We are looking at calls for service from the time that the call rings till the time that the call is answered by the 911 telecommunicator. And then we're looking at the time that it's answered till the time that it's ready to be dispatched, and from the time that it's dispatched till the time of response. So all of those things are important. The quality assurance program is also looking at the type of questions we ask. If we're asking if we're asking about weapons, if that's necessary, if we're asking about injuries, if that's necessary, how we handle that call, our customer service, if we can de-escalate a caller who might be upset or frustrated, or if, unfortunately, sometimes we escalate callers by them feeling like we're taking too much time with the call or questions that we're asking that they feel might not be relevant. So all of that matters in our quality assurance program. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. I didn't know I was going to need it, but I do. Thanks. You're awesome. Water break, sorry. Within the center, beyond the quality assurance program, we also have system staff that take care of keeping our technology running, which is obviously extremely important for the center. Excuse me, oh my goodness. We have 2 individuals within the center that keep track of all of our technology, but we also coordinate with the city and the county for their IS departments, making sure that we are up and running, that if there's a problem with the network, we're working with the city on the network side. If there's a problem in the building that's IS related, we're working with county IS for that. If it's something with our phone system or our workstations, we're working with our internal department and we're working with our vendors that we work with, or if it's with the radio system, we're working with City Utilities, who handles the radio system for the city. She got me one. Thank you. Beyond that, we have a GIS specialist that works for the center. So currently we're hiring for that position, but we also coordinate and collaborate with the city and the county for GIS work. So that is anything, geographic information systems, anything mapping that goes on in this center. anything throughout Greene County, and then a little bit beyond Greene County, we work with our neighboring jurisdictions to share mapping information with them, because we might have a pursuit that goes from inside the city of Springfield, where maybe a Greene County deputy has to take that pursuit into Christian County. And so we need to make sure that we're fully aware of where they're going, what roads they're on, and how to get them help. I did not know this was going to happen. I apologize. That GIS person is also intricate in how we receive information with our 911 calls. Not all calls deliver with GPS location, and so our map is important whenever we receive the information from the caller, because if they're calling from a cell phone, a lot of times we are only receiving triangulation location from the cell phone towers that they're bouncing off of. And so that helps us to identify on the map where they might be. It gives us a radius or a vicinity of where they might be at, and we can narrow that down as long as we stay on the call with those callers and get something that might be close to them. We have another software that we use to try to get the GPS from the device that they use to call or text us with, but that doesn't always work. So that GIS information is extremely important for us. Something else that's always going on with that GIS data is that we have layers that are always being managed and modified on behalf of each department that we serve. So if a police department's beats change, or if a fire department's jurisdictional boundaries change, or a city or a jurisdiction annexes property, then that map has to be massaged and changed to meet that jurisdiction, so that will encompass those agencies that might need to respond to an emergency in that area in the event that we enter a call at that location. So that's why our GIS person is important. And then we have operations, just like any center would have, where we have an operations manager that's over and in charge of our 9 supervisors and all of our staff on the floor. And when we're fully staffed at the center, we have 84 full-time staff, and we have 4 part-time positions now at the center that have been tremendous help to us. Last year I talked about us working towards getting those positions. This year those individuals are really helping us out because they come from the center, so they have experience, and they were easy and fast to train, plus they have a heart for it, and so they've helped us out with the overtime. We're currently staffed at 75 full-time people right now, so full-time and part-time. So we still have positions open for the center, which is not uncommon for 911 and definitely not uncommon for Springfield Greene. We're used to having open positions. We're just getting closer. So we're ready for that. Some of the challenges at the center that I wanted to talk to you about, and some of the takeaways that I think are important for everybody to know, is just kind of what to expect when you call 911. So I'll talk about the takeaways first, and then I'll talk about the challenges after. The takeaway is when you call 911, the most important thing that you can know is your location, because it isn't always delivered. If you call from a landline telephone, any of you have landlines still? Raise a hand. Okay. If you call from a landline telephone, we're getting the location of your address with that landline call. So we're getting that data immediately, which is really great. And that's all based on your billing information. So for some places that have landlines, like some businesses, maybe a banking institution that has multiple banks, that landline call, although it might be at a different branch, might deliver at the billing address for their main location. So we've had to go through legislative changes to try to require something different where we can get the location of that address. A lot of those companies have changed over to voice over IP, where voice over IP will deliver with the information that they enter. So if they've changed they're at a different branch, they enter a different address, then whenever they call 911, that will deliver to us with that actual address. If you're calling from a cell phone though, we're getting that triangulation information, but sometimes that's within 50 meters, which is a large space that might not be the best to find you, especially if you're in a high density area like the city of Springfield. But if we use like the separate software like RapidSOS, we might be able to get the GPS from your device that you call or text on, but we also might not. So first and foremost, most important question that we're going to ask is, what's the location of your emergency? And we want you to know where you're at. So that takeaway is share with your family and friends, especially if you have teenagers driving, where they're at is important to know every single moment of the day and time, especially if they're driving. A lot of us zone out when we drive. I do it at times. But if I'm on the interstate, I'm always paying attention to mile markers and exits. If you're in the community, you need to know what road or highway you're on and what the closest cross street is. And that doesn't mean you have to know the closest like small street, residential street, but a next major intersection is really helpful and important. Or out in the county, a section line road, so another major intersection is important. And then knowing a rough estimate of where you're at from that. Like, are you a quarter of a mile, an eighth of a mile, a half a mile, a mile? And a lot of people don't teach that. First of all, I don't think we learn it in school anymore. And I don't think we teach it as parents to our kids very often. When we're talking about driving, we're talking about paying attention to the road and turn your blinker on at this time, but not everybody teaches them how to recognize and gauge their space between a mile to an eighth of a mile, and those things can save a life. Something else that we find, especially with young drivers, but even as adults, is there's a lot of people who don't know their cardinal directions, north, south, east, west, and that is number one top thing you should be making sure people in your family know and learn and understand. Where the sun rises, where the sun sets. But for those individuals who don't know, they tell us right or left, and we've got to figure it out. We have to ask the questions of where were you coming from and where were you going to, so that we can gauge. And everybody uses landmarks, which is totally fine. For our telecommunicators, most of us know, where Walmart on Chestnut Expressway, well, there's not a Walmart on Chestnut Expressway, but where Walmart is on the West Bypass, the neighborhood market, or where Walmart is on Sunshine. But if there's a disaster, like God forbid, an EF5 tornado that comes through and takes jurisdiction, it takes all of your structures, then you don't know where you're at. And I was the director during the Joplin tornado, and people knew nothing about where they were at. So knowing your north, south, east, and west, knowing where you were coming from, where you were going to, what road you were on, your nearest cross streets that you were coming up to, those things were very important. So share that information. The second thing I would want you to know is not only do we get your location, but we're going to verify it. Meaning, we're going to ask you again. Not that we didn't hear you the first time, or not that we weren't listening, but just to make sure we got it right. So sometimes when somebody's talking to you, especially if they're intense or upset, they might be yelling or cursing, we're typing, and sometimes we type things backwards. And so for us, when we say, could you repeat that to make sure I got it right? We're looking at how we typed it while you repeat it to make sure we got it right. But sometimes also when you're really upset like that, you might give us the wrong location. And that second time you might actually give it the right way because you've had some time to talk through it. It's more of a relief reaction that you had because 911 answered. And so in the beginning you just gave everything, and then you had a moment to catch your breath, and now you're giving it again, but this time you give it differently. And we can catch that and we can verify that again, make sure we got it right. We're also going to get your callback number. We have caller ID. It's called something different for us, but sometimes it's not your phone that you're calling us from. If you're involved in a car crash and you can't find your phone, somebody hands you a phone to call 911, you're calling from their phone. So we're going to get their phone number. So we're going to ask you for your phone number in case we need to get back in touch with you. And then the next question is a little iffy. If you're really upset, we're going to ask your name to use it to help calm you down. But somewhere in the call, we're going to ask your name, but we're also going to say, tell me exactly what happened. And a lot of the movies and shows tell you that the first thing we ask is, what is your emergency? And that is not the right question to ask. And I'll be honest, we used to. We were kind of all over the page for a while, where sometimes we would say, what is your emergency? But that's not the right question to ask first. Because as long as we know where you're at, we can send the cavalry to you. But if we don't know where you're at, we only know what happened, and we get disconnected and we got no good information with your call, we are trying to call you back to find you if we have your phone number. So that question comes either second, third, or fourth, depending on how we need to calm you, what kind of questions need to come next. The next questions really flow are more about safety. We want to make sure you're safe, bystanders are safe, you can get to safety. If you're in a side of a house that's on fire or you smell smoke, we're going to want you to go outside and call us back from a safe location. We're not going to try to bug you with a bunch of questions. We want to make sure that you're safe whenever you're talking to us, because we are going to take some time with you. We are going to ask you some questions. Those questions do not delay a response, because in the center, out of the staff that we have, we typically have 8 to 12, sometimes 14 people on at a time. That usually is about 4 to 5 call takers, but everybody else in there is a dispatcher. So if I'm a call taker and I'm talking to you and I'm asking you a lot of questions, then JR over here might be the dispatcher and he's already dispatching it out. All we have to have is the location and what happened to dispatch it. We might be telling our field units we're still obtaining further because we might need to get safety information from you, but all the while the call is already being dispatched out to first responders, especially if it's a high priority call. So that's important to note also. So nothing is delaying the response. The only delay is simply because we're in 2 separate buildings, and that's getting medical on the call, where we're sending first responders from the fire department. If it meets their criteria, or we're sending law enforcement, we've got to transfer that call over to medical so the EMS, whether it's Cox or Mercy, can get on the line, get an ambulance started that direction, and then they're going to provide some pre-arrival instructions for you if it warrants that. So like control bleeding, delivering a baby, doing chest compressions, so they might be doing CPR with a collar. After that, we are off the line at that point. So that is a challenge for us. Those calls that are medical in nature, where our caller might be really upset and we need to get control of the call really quickly, although the caller is the one who still has control, which is totally fine, but we need to calm them down enough to get the information that's necessary to get that call processed and get them over to EMS if it's a medical call, so that they're with the right person who can provide those pre-arrival instructions and get an ambulance on the way. Some of our other challenging calls are child callers and some adult callers. We have a lot of crisis calls that come through the center, and some of those are individuals that may have some type of mental health crisis, and that can make it very difficult for us to try to pinpoint exactly what's going on. So we're asking the same type of questions, but we're trying to reword them in a way that can help that caller explain what it is they need to get it for us. And a lot of our kids don't know where they're at. So we're doing everything we can to help them understand. And that may mean, can you go look on the table and see if there's a letter or an envelope and read to me what you see? And it may just be an address on an envelope that we have to get from the caller. All of those things are how we get responders to the call. Another challenging call that we have is abandoned calls. We actually have about 6% of our call volume as incoming abandoned calls, meaning somebody accidentally dialed 911, their phone accidentally dialed 911, they had an iPhone and it hit the SOS button. Used to be the 9 key, if you held it down, it dialed 911. Used to be flip phones, any button, if you push a bunch of series of buttons, they would call 911. Right now, it's just people putting their phone in their purse or their pocket. It might accidentally dial and hit SOS if it's an iPhone. Androids are better, I know, JR. But we also have people who call and then hang up. Like, I don't think I should have called 911. Oh, I see a bunch of people on their phone. I'm going to hang up. Other people are calling 911. And we just ask that you just stay on the line with us. Even if you know it was an accidental dial, stay on the line with us long enough for us to verify we're getting good information from your phone. Number one, it might save your life down the road, right? Because then you'll know if your phone's delivering good information to us. If you're in a particular location, then we might get better information. Number two, we verified you. which is good because we're verifying that information that's coming through. We know it's not an emergency, so we're not frantically trying to call back, trying to figure out what the location was, because sometimes you have weird noises like this in the background on your 911 call, and we don't know what's going on. Are they drilling somebody? Are they like tying somebody down? We don't know what's happening. Sometimes we hear laughter, but it doesn't sound like laughter to us. It sounds like people screaming. So all of those calls will stress our people out. They're worried. They think something major's happened, so they're trying to figure out what the location is that they can get nearest to that person who might be calling 911, who might have had their phone taken away from them or their phone smashed or something. So just stay on the line and verify that information. It doesn't take very long, and it's definitely going to help our staff out, but it might help you out in the future. Huh?
Don't give your kids your old phone.
Yeah, don't give your kids your old phone. That's a good one. As long as the phone has a battery, it can dial 911, and we get nothing with it except for audio. So we might get the tower that it bounced off of. We might not, but we're still getting the 911 call. And we do have a lot of prank calls, which we would constitute as misuse of 911, but if they're kids, that's a totally different deal. And it can tie up the center. And we've had some of that done on purpose, and we've had some of it done just because they're juveniles, and then we've had some of it done accidental because somebody gives their baby a phone that has battery and they don't think about it, and baby's pushing a button and that just happens to be an SOS button that dials 911. So, good point. The other type of challenging call is just the regular misuse of 911, where an individual is calling 911 consistently. Maybe they have a rant over the election, or that happens, or they have some type of rant over something that's going on in their life, but it's not anything we can help them with. And so we do our best to try to get to some type of a point where we might be able to help them or send law enforcement or try to send some type of assistance. And after a certain point, it's almost like harassing 911. And it just becomes something that we ask law enforcement to engage with. And at that point, they will choose if they're going to file charges or try to send it in for charges for misuse of 911. And we have a really great group of people here in the justice side that actually recognize misuse of 911, and prosecutors that follow through with filing charges, and officers that follow through, and deputies that follow through with arresting people for misuse of 911. We're very thankful for that because that's not common in a lot of jurisdictions. A lot of people are more worried about what it looks like because they're a voter. But when they tie up a 911 center with their constant calls and rants that might not have anything to do with what we can help them with, they're tying up the ability for somebody who has a true emergency to get through. And that might be one of your family members or one of my family members that's dialing 911 and getting a fast busy because they can't get through. So not all jurisdictions are like us where we have a lot of lines that ring into the center. Some jurisdictions only have 4 lines that ring in. And if all 4 of those lines are tied up because 3 of them have a car accident on the phone, and one of them has a misuse of 911 caller that keeps hanging up calling, or child caller with a phone that has a battery, that 5th call is not going through unless they have a rollover process. So there's just a lot of challenges that can come along with that. Moving on from challenges, I did want to leave you guys with some information about projects. At the last huddle, I talked about some things that were going on. We thought might move a little quicker. They're moving a little slower, but we're actually getting in the thick of it now. So we're getting ready to upgrade our computer-aided dispatching software, which we're looking forward to. That is the software that we use to enter the demographic information and all of the comments based on the calls that you guys make, or the field unit does a traffic stop. With that upgrade is going to give us integration to that software that I said called Rapid SOS, which can give us the GPS from the device that calls or texts 911. So we actually can typically get pretty decent information if it's hitting what we call Rapid. So through that integration, it keeps the 911 telecommunicator from having to log into another piece of software, because we have tons of software up, And it's right there in their system. Whenever the 911 call comes through, it'll deliver that information. They can choose which one matches what the caller says and actually hone in on their location for the caller with our GIS information. We are also in the thick of next generation 911, which means we're changing the way we receive 911 calls, and we're changing the data that we receive currently, where we may receive just the cell phone tower location and the telephone number that the person's calling from. Next generation is anything you can pretty much think of that's delivering with a 911 call. So a lot of people are putting their medical alert information online right now, and we're getting that through that third-party software, RapidSOS. But next generation is something that's going to give people at their fingertips the ability to put so much more information out there. But it also changes the way we transfer calls and how we receive them. It makes sure that the calls that we're receiving are within the GIS jurisdictional boundaries that they should be delivered in. So if you're on I-44 and you're traveling towards Joplin from Springfield, but you accidentally hit a tower in the Lawrence County area, but you're still in Greene County, when you dial 911, your call is going to go to Lawrence County. But with Next Generation 911, your call, as long as you're within the jurisdictional boundaries of Greene County, your call is going to come to us. And seconds are lives. So that matters, and that's extremely beneficial to us. So we're looking forward to the next generation change. It also gives us the ability to transfer those calls from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, where currently in the current legacy 911 platform, we cannot transfer across state lines with any kind of data. So all they hear is audio, and that's it. And we cannot transfer from one jurisdiction to another that might have different carriers. Like we're an AT&T customer, but Christian County is a Brightspeed customer. We cannot currently transfer all data to Christian County and vice versa if they get a call for us. So you can imagine how much of a headache that is for us on 65 Highway when something major happens and it should be in our jurisdiction, but it went to Christian County first. So that will change things for us tremendously. Along with that, we received a grant, the County Commission approved it, and we were able to receive the money to help bring Mercy and their communication center on our phone system, which is going to change and shear off seconds and those life-saving calls, which is going to be important. So we're looking forward to that. Mercy should be live by the end of the year, and we're ready. And then we have a lot of different software projects going on, but we do have a big GIS project going on. There's a third-party company, this is another grant we got, a third-party company that's in, and they're addressing every apartment at the front door and every strip mall to the door of the business, where you can imagine how many apartment complexes are in Greene County in general, but definitely in Springfield, or how many strip malls are in Springfield and Greene County. We currently have an address for every strip mall, just one, an address for the mall, Battlefield Mall, just one, and an address for every apartment, whether we have it for the apartment building or we have it for the apartment complex as a whole. Now we will actually have an address for every single apartment and every single business within Battlefield Mall and with every single business within a strip mall. And that's imperative whenever somebody calls and says that they just got shot. We need to be able to send units, and if they don't know exactly where they're at, or that business name is not in our system because it's a newer business or they didn't update it when the city sent out a business list, then we'll actually see that location, which is good. Some other things that we're looking at AI for quality assurance. There's some AI software out there that we're just starting to dabble and think about and do some demos on. That'll help us speed up our quality assurance program. And that's how we determine what training our staff needs. So that really helps us to gauge what we're lacking on training. And then 988 co-location is something we were talking about last year, and we're almost there. We're ready for them to move in. We know we're going to have one individual working from 3 p.m. till 10 p.m. Monday through Friday, and eventually another person working from 8 to 4. So we'll have overlap from Monday through Friday. And eventually, if it works very well, we'll actually have 24/7 coverage. And that's Burrell who's partnering with us. That was all through MOUs and agreements with the county and the city and Burrell. And we're looking forward to that because a lot of those crisis callers, individuals who are in crisis or who are considering taking their life, They need somebody who can spend time talking with them who's trained. And although we train our people in crisis negotiations, we don't have a lot of time to just focus with individuals who are in crisis. And we don't have a lot of opportunity to look up resources for those individuals to get them the help that they need that might not be a police officer, a deputy, fire truck, or an ambulance. And so having Burl in the center is going to be a huge deal for us. We're really looking forward to that because the way that 988 currently works, when you dial 988 from your phone, depending on what your area code is where that 988 call goes. They don't have geolocation information, so they don't have the ability to locate you from your device like 911 does at times if we're using other software. But they also don't have the ability to send that 988 call to a local 988 center. So it might go to Colorado if you have a Colorado area code. And although that may be okay for some individuals in crisis, others, especially a juvenile, that's not okay. Because we need to get somebody to their family to get to that juvenile to make sure that they're safe and that they've got the resources that they need. And calling a 988 center in Colorado is probably not going to get them very quick assistance. So again, we're looking forward to that change, which is going to be a great thing. Otherwise, we still continue to recruit. We're still working on retention, and we've been redefining the center and what we do in the center, which is very important for us. As you can imagine, 911 calls are very negative. They don't call just to say hi, and they can be really stressful. And we're the first person to take their call, and you've taken calls from your family members when they've been really upset. Like if you're the first person to answer the call when somebody's really upset, you get like the worst of them. We get the worst of these callers, and it's not their fault. They can't help it. But that causes our people to stress out and burn out. And that's why we have retention problems, and that's why we have recruitment problems. People have a hard time applying for a job these days where they're going to take it home, because that's what we do. So redefining the center and what we do and how we do it is important. So the last thing that I wanted to leave you guys with is what our people are like. They're not only intelligent, but they're emotionally intelligent, and they have to be. If they don't have that compassion, that caring, box in their heart, they don't have the ability to understand what these callers need when they call, especially if you have a caller who's in crisis. So having individuals like that in the center is imperative. And finding people like that in this day and age can be very difficult because a lot of us just want to go home at the end of our day and not think about what we did during the day. But we can't leave it at the door. Our people care, but they're also funny. They have a great sense of humor. And we talk about this in public safety. Sometimes it's not well received by other people. They have a little different type of humor. But our people do care about the job that they do. On our mission statement, the very first thing is about the community that we serve, and that is the most important thing. That is the reason why we're there, and the agencies that we serve to serve the community. Everybody there lives that and breathes that. So it is important for us to be able to recognize them. We do look forward to National Telecommunicators Week this next week. And so if you take something else away, just take away that when you do call 911, even if they sound like they're being a little controlling, they're really truly, because they care about you, trying to get the best information that they can to be most efficient and effective for you. Because that next call for us might be our loved one. It might be our family member, or my partner sitting over on call taking at a different location might be the one who answers the call for my son who's had a car accident. So we all have to care about each other, and we're all human. We're somebody's kid, we're somebody's parent, we're somebody's grandparent. I'm a grandparent of 6 kids now. I mean, we care, and we don't know who that next call is going to be. And we also know that our 911 callers, it's not personal when they call in and they're yelling or cussing. It is the moment that they're in crisis, and they need somebody to talk to. So it's kind of a relief reaction for them whenever we answer the phone. So You got your takeaways. Do you guys have any questions for me? Yes.
Do the counselors, chaplains, or people like that work like are always on the shift on the floor?
So that's a great question. We have a peer support team within the center, and we're actually increasing the size of it. So we just added 3 additional people to our peer support team. They're all trained. They're trained in crisis incident management, but they're also trained in just peer support in general. They're trained on the type of resources that are available to our staff. And then we have the ability, at the city, we have EAP, but that's not always the best because you need a culturally competent clinician whenever you're dealing with something like public safety. Otherwise, they'll tell you to quit your job. You shouldn't even be working in it. Been there. But we do have the possibility of utilizing chaplains in the area. So we have fire chaplains and law enforcement chaplains. The sheriff's office has a chaplain. And something that I haven't mentioned to the commission yet, sorry about it. But the sheriff's office has a clinician that works for the sheriff's office specifically, and I have met with her. She's actually come over to the center and done some sit-along time with us and offered to do the same thing for us, where she would do regular check-ins, and I think that's something we might be going down the path on. But at the state level, there is a lot of clinicians that want to be culturally competent and want to be able to serve, whether it's virtual or in person. And so we're looking forward to that change. It's with a program called CIT. And at the national level, we do have a chaplaincy program getting ready to start on the 911 side. So we're also looking forward to that. But thank you for that question. Any other questions? All right. Well, hopefully I gave you some good takeaways. Thank you guys for being here. Thanks for being so attentive.